Greatest Showman soundtrack, how 2018's biggest album, so far, came to be. No one expected The Greatest Show on Earth to translate into the biggest-selling album on Earth. Yet The Greatest Showman soundtrack hasn't faced anything remotely competitive when it comes to the mantle for 2018's top album, at the midway point. Even if Drake is soon poised to overtake it. It's sold about 1.1 million copies this year, more than twice as many as the number 2 contender, Justin Timberlake's Man of the Woods. 7 months into its run, the soundtrack shows no signs of slowing, continuing week after week to sit in the top 2 or 3 on the iTunes and Amazon sales charts. Overseas, it's no less a juggernaut. The Showman just reached the pinnacle of the British sales chart for the 21st non-consecutive week. We could put it all down to Hugh Jackman's irresistible pop star prowess, or we could look to the creative team behind the music, songwriters Benjamin Pasek and Justin Paul and producer Greg Wells. The latter was not just a secret ingredient but a savior for the project, coming on less than 6 months before the release date to take primary control of a song score that had been suffering from too many cooks. That Wells had never even worked on a film soundtrack before was no particular minus to director Michael Gracie, who was hardly looking for someone with a lot of cast album bona fides. He found someone with contemporary sheen and shipwriting know-how in Wells, whose producing and or co-writing credits include One Republic, Apologize, 21 Pilots, The Vessel Album, Adele, One and Only, Keith Urban, Wasted Time, and Katy Perry, Waking Up in Vegas. Related: listen to the heroic main theme for and number 039 Assassin and number 039 Escreed Odyssey and number 039, exclusive, LA composer Looks East, providing in number 039 Ellis Island and number 039, score for PBS and number 039, and number 039 great performances and number 039. Wells isn't done with the Showman world, either. He's co-writing with star Keela Settle for a debut album he plans to produce, and he's handling some of the songs on a not yet officially announced fall release that will have pop stars covering material from the movie. Variety spoke with Wells about the unlikelihood of the soundtrack eclipsing even the Carters, Cardi B, Timberlake and Post Malone as the album, so far, of 2018. 7 months into the run of this album, it remains near the top of the Amazon CD and download charts as well as the iTunes album chart. People aren't just streaming but buying this album. Could you have foreseen that? Greg Wells: it's an enormous shock. Anything that celebrates the underdog always gets me going, so I thought the movie would find its audience. It didn't open very well, and then it tripled at the box office the following weekend. And then the soundtrack was sort of sitting there, and then it started to really go, too. I remember about a month before the soundtrack was released, my manager said, "You know, there are some other record producers that were working on the music before you were hired, Greg, and we have to share some of the royalty points with them. What do you think is a reasonable amount to ask for yourself?" And I said, "I'm not sure it matters, because I feel like this soundtrack will probably not sell more than 1,000 copies. Because it was a soundtrack from a family movie about a circus." None of us, including the songwriters, had any clue that this was gonna be the biggest album of 2018. Had someone told us that, we would have laughed and fallen off the chair. I can attest that there are young people who are streaming these songs who haven't even seen the movie. They're not listening as a souvenir of a film. They just like the songs. That makes me really happy. I've never worked on a film before, and we wanted this music to stand on its own. Justin and Benjamin, the brilliant songwriters, also wanted the songs to stand on their own as well as serve the movie well when the movie is playing. We really wanted to approach this as pop songs, even though Justin and Benjamin are very proudly rooted in the theatrical world and never want to leave it. We really wanted this to feel like an album that you could just put on and listen to. And Michael wanted to make sure this sounded like a competitive, modern album that could maybe get a shot at one day being on the radio. And This Is Me is an amazing pop song. I think it's the poppiest stuff that Justin and Benjamin have ever written. You came on fairly late in the process. What had already been done? Before I became involved, there were several people that were hired. Ricky Reed was hired to work on it. Ryan Lewis brought really cool elements to the tracks that they worked on. We used a lot of those elements, and they're credited for it. But it couldn't get to sort of a place where it sounded like all the music fit together. They would bring in different teams of people to work on different songs, and they moved it pretty far down the field, but nothing felt finished and it didn't feel cohesive. They shot the sequences in the movie to the demos. Most of the actors' vocals were already recorded before I got hired. We did a little bit with you afterwards. We did one night with Zendaya, we did a couple of touch-ups with Keela.